The fourth time my husband David left me behind for his annual family trip, I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling strategic. He departed for Aspen, secure in the lie that our Craftsman home was his anchor and my prison. But while he was busy sending sun-drenched photos with his lover, Chloe, and her parents, I was in a sterile downtown office, signing away the deed. He came home expecting a confrontation, maybe a tearful plea. Instead, he stepped onto the porch of a house he no longer owned. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. My name is Eliza, and the fourth time my husband David left me behind for his annual family trip, I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling strategic. He departed for Aspen, secure in the lie that our Craftsman home was his anchor and my prison. But while he was busy sending sun-drenched photos with his lover, Chloe, and his family, I was in a sterile downtown office, signing away the deed. He came home expecting a tearful plea. Instead, he stepped onto the porch of a house he no longer owned. I remember the scent of cinnamon and polished wood that day, the signature of our perfect little life. I was in the foyer of the Craftsman house my parents had generously helped us secure, a house David and his family always called ours, as if my savings and my family's significant financial contribution were irrelevant. I was wrapping a sterling silver picture frame, an anniversary gift from my mother-in-law, an annual tribute I was expected to perform to maintain my status as the model wife, the woman who ran an art gallery but always prioritized her husband's social standing. The gold foil was smooth under my fingertips, a cruel contrast to the familiar knot of dread that tightened in my chest every August. That was the week David and his entire clan took their annual lavish family retreat, and I, without fail, was excluded. My phone buzzed. It was David, texting. "Everything is packed. Flight early tomorrow. We're all set for Aspen. No worries about the cabin size, it's just family." The words, particularly that last clinical assertion, "It's just family," didn't sting like the first 3 years. They solidified a truth I had desperately tried to ignore. To them, I wasn't kin. I was a beautiful accessory, a housekeeper, the reliable figure left at home to mind things like his carefully pruned rose bushes. The rose bushes were an excellent metaphor for our marriage, beautiful on the surface, meticulously controlled, and requiring all my attention while he reaped the social rewards. David never once touched the shears, yet always took credit for the perfect blooms. I slid the silver frame into a velvet bag, my hands moving with detached efficiency. The exclusion had always been a sharp, emotional injury, a psychological warfare waged through omission. His mother, the matriarch, had perfected the art of the subtle slight. "Oh, Eliza dear, the altitude always makes you so dizzy. It's for the best you stay here," she'd cooed one year, ignoring I'd scaled higher mountains in my youth. The real reason, I knew, was that I did not fit their narrative of old money perfection, though my family's money was older, just quietly earned. But this year, the pain was different. It wasn't rejection, it was the cold, analytical pain of calculation. For weeks, a more serious breach had been gnawing at our perfect marriage, of $40,000 imbalance in our shared investment ledger. I told myself it was a mistake, because the alternative that the man I had pledged my life to was systematically stealing from me was a truth too heavy to carry. I took a deep breath, the scent of cinnamon suddenly suffocating, and I knew David was leaving town, and I was finally going to stop asking questions and start finding answers. David was already asleep when I tiptoed into the bedroom, or at least he pretended to be. His breathing was too even, his body too stiff. I stood by the window, the moonlight illuminating his prize-winning roses, the roses he had reminded me to water. I used to love those roses, but now they felt like a testament to his misplaced priorities and his complete control over our marriage. I didn't love him at that moment, only a chilling detachment, an emptiness that allowed clarity to flood in. I looked at the man in my bed and saw a stranger who had crafted an illusion, using me as his audience. The greatest betrayal wasn't the infidelity I vaguely suspected. It was the years of emotional and financial condescension, the slow erosion of my self-worth to fit his narrative. The money was the catalyst, but the contempt was the fuel. The next morning, the house was silent. I didn't water the roses. Instead, I drove to the downtown legal district. I wasn't meeting just any lawyer. I was meeting Ava, my best friend, who had traded her art history major for a career in family law. She was waiting in her minimalist office with a cup of unsweetened black coffee, because unlike my husband, Ava remembered the details that truly mattered. Ava was pragmatic, sharp, and fiercely loyal. "You look like you haven't slept, but your eyes are finally clear, Eliza," Ava said. "Tell me everything and don't protect him this time." I slid a printout across the table, the investment ledger showing the $40,000 withdrawal flagged only as asset allocation. I watched Ava's brow furrow as she scanned the numbers. I had already confessed the constant exclusion and condescension. Now, the paper spoke louder than my anxieties. He said it was an investment in a startup, something too complicated for me to understand. I told her. Ava simply highlighted the vague title. "David is a financial consultant. Eliza, a withdrawal this large, designated vaguely, is a red flag. It's marital funds, regardless of whose name is on the account." Ava pulled up our house deed records. "The house is key. Your parents made the down payment, and you paid for all the renovations. It was initially registered as your sole, separate property, though David later insisted on adding his name for appearance's sake." She paused. "We need to check the title status now. If he's been this aggressive with money, he might have leveraged the property without your knowledge." I remembered when David convinced me to add his name, calling it a romantic gesture of faith rather than a predatory power play. It was the first erosion of my boundaries. Ava instructed me to find every financial document David had hidden. "Eliza, this is past suspicion. This is discovery," she said. Placing a sealed evidence bag on the table, "I need you to look through this without flinching." Inside were bank statements from a private account David had never disclosed. My hands were shaking as I pulled them out. The balance was nearly $1.8 million, a secret fortune. What truly stole the air from my lungs were the regular, staggering transfers of $10,000 to $20,000 every month to a recipient named Chloe V, with notes like, "Living expenses Q2. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't a clerical error or a startup investment, it was an allowance. I flipped through the pages, seeing a methodical and cruel construction of a second life receipts from European vacation rentals, luxury car payments, a personal chef, frivolous expenses David always mocked me for considering. Then, I found the true shock, a receipt from a boutique jeweler, dated last Christmas, for an emerald-cut diamond pendant, listed at $35,000. My Christmas gift that year had been an inexpensive leather handbag. I held the $40,000 ledger printout next to the bank statement. The withdrawal was dated 3 days before a lump sum deposit of the same amount was made into Chloe V's account, labeled Aspen Fund, the final grotesque piece of the puzzle snapped into place. This wasn't just infidelity, it was calculated theft aimed at funding a parallel life. The emotional injury was secondary to the financial and legal violation. I closed my eyes, the scent of Ava's office clearing the cobwebs of self-doubt. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, searing clarity. I hadn't been an anxious wife, I had been a pawn. I handed the documents back to Ava, my hands steady. "I need you to file the initial paperwork. I don't care about the money he gave her. I care about the fraud, and I need access to his office. Tonight." Ava simply nodded. "The war has begun. We fight crime, not jealousy." That night, the Craftsman house felt like a theatrical set. His office, a room he meticulously kept locked, was my target. I found the emergency key hidden behind a row of ancient law tomes inside his office. The faint scent of his cologne, once comforting, now smelled deceptive. The room was sterile, organized by a man who needed control. I wasn't looking for order, I was looking for the flaw. I went straight for his desk, in the bottom drawer, locked with a separate combination. I found a digital tablet. The passcode was his mother's birthday, a small detail that spoke volumes. The tablet unlocked to his cloud storage. I searched the map history, and there it was, a recent pin drop, labeled Florida. It was a high-end residential complex. I cross-referenced the address with Chloe V.'s name. The ownership records appeared. Chloe V. was listed as the sole proprietor of a newly purchased $800,000 condo paid for in cash. My world tilted, not from heartbreak, but from pure incandescent rage. David hadn't been making risky investments. He had been systematically liquidating our future to buy his lover a sanctuary. The realization was liberating. I was fighting to expose a criminal conspiracy. I downloaded copies of the property records and emails. Then I dug deeper. The true bombshell was a file labeled Mortgage Refi. Inside was an application for a $500,000 home equity line of credit HELOC against our house. The purpose was joint family investment. The application date was for 2 days after his return from Aspen. He was going to use the house my parents paid for as his personal piggy bank. The most damning piece of evidence was the last page, the signature line for the co-owner. My name, Eliza Miller, was signed, but the handwriting was horrifyingly wrong. It was a careful, deliberate forgery. He was planning to use my forged signature to place $500,000 of debt on my home. My heart seemed to stop. This wasn't manipulation. This was felony fraud. The shock was tactical. He had crossed a legal line that made my countermove necessary for my own protection. Just as I was photographing the forged signature, my phone buzzed. It was a video call from David. I answered, my face neutral. "Eliza, honey, I was just about to check on you." David's voice was smooth. He looked relaxed. "Are you taking good care of the rose bushes? They need attention." I forced a tired smile, my eyes fixed on the forged document. "Of course, David. They are perfectly watered. I always take care of what's important at home." The lie was effortless. I hung up, feeling a surge of icy resolve. I sent all the evidence to Ava's encrypted server. "We're not filing for divorce. Ava," I typed. "We're filing for an injunction against mortgage fraud and initiating an emergency sale. We need to sell it before he can finalize that loan." The next 3 days were a blur of efficiency. I moved into Ava's spare apartment, a liberatingly empty space. "This is unprecedented, Eliza," Ava said, finalizing our strategy. "Because the initial deed was in your name as separate property, and because we have clear evidence of his intent to commit fraud, we can argue for an emergency order to execute a quick, legally protected sale." David's felony was my escape hatch. Selling the house in under a week meant taking a hit on the price. I accepted every reduction without a second thought. The money was secondary. The alternative, letting David finalize the $500,000 fraudulent mortgage, meant losing the house in a protracted legal battle. I chose the clean break. The court order was granted late Wednesday afternoon. The buyer was an investment group seeking a quick acquisition. On Thursday morning, while David was in Aspen, I stood in a sterile office downtown. My hand didn't tremble as I signed the closing papers, officially transferring the deed of the Craftsman house out of our names forever. The sense of finality was immense. It felt like signing my own release papers. The attorney slid the check across the desk, less than market value, but enough to reimburse my parents and cover my savings, with a large remainder secured in a trust. The true gain was the finality. The house was gone. David's leverage was gone. My prison was gone. I stepped into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to the family group chat. "The Aspen trip sounds wonderful. I just wanted to let you know I've successfully concluded a major investment. House is officially off the market." The ambiguity was the point. The mention of the house being off the market would trigger instant panic. They knew what it meant for their $500,000 loan plan. I archived the chat. My final stop was the Craftsman house. I used my key one last time. It was neat, manicured, and silent. I didn't take any furniture, only my grandmother's letters and my passport on the mahogany table. I placed the house key next to it. I left a small white square of paper with 3 simple words, "Title now clear." I closed the door gently. I didn't look back at the porch or the pruned rose bushes. I got into the waiting rideshare, a woman walking away from a life she no longer recognized. David cut his trip short. The cryptic message had worked. Ava informed me that David, the matriarch, and Chloe had all booked flights back a day early. They weren't coming for me. They were coming to secure their asset. They believed I had stumbled onto the HELOC but hadn't acted. The irony was exquisite. I was at my art gallery that Friday afternoon. Surrounded by vibrant colors, I hadn't felt this connected to my own work in years. The gallery felt solid, real. At 4:17 p.m., my phone vibrated with an urgent call from David. I didn't answer. At the same moment, Ava texted me that they had arrived at the house. I pictured the scene: David, the matriarch, and Chloe pulling up to the curb. Seeing the single key on the welcome mat, I imagined them picking up the small white note. Title now clear, the ambiguity, the sudden, cold defiance, then the dawning reality: the house was empty. The ownership, the control, was gone. My phone rang again, followed by a torrent of abusive texts. He called me irrational, hysterical, and demanded to know where my things were. He never asked where I was. I ignored them all and composed one final email. It was addressed to David, copied to the matriarch and his attorney. Subject: petition for dissolution of marriage and notice of litigation. The body was short and brutal attached. You will find a copy of the finalized deed of sale for 4,501 Elmwood Drive, executed on August 10th. All equity has been secured in a court-appointed trust, pending resolution of my fraud claim, specifically regarding the forged HELOC application and the dissipation of marital assets to Miss Chloe via. Any further communication must be directed to my counsel, Ava Hayes. Please be advised that the new owners will take possession in 48 hours. I attached the legal documents, the sales contract, the proof of Chloe's condo purchase, and the image of his forged signature. I hit send. The weight of the last 5 years lifted. I pulled up David's contact in my phone and firmly pressed block. The conversation was over. The house, my home, was my only voice, and its silence was deafening. I felt a profound sense of peace. I hadn't merely sought revenge, I had sought justice. And in doing so, I had regained my self-respect and my future. The gallery, my business, felt like the most solid foundation I had ever built. David had calculated every angle except one: that the person he treated as unimportant would one day become the most strategic force against him. He had treated me like a piece of furniture, and I had sold the anchor to his entire fraudulent existence. The house was supposed to be the symbol of my subservience, and I had turned it into his biggest liability. The true lesson wasn't about the house or the money, it was about defining your own value. For years, I allowed David and his family to define me as the model wife, an accessory with no inherent value. When I walked away, I realized that freedom isn't the absence of conflict, it is the courage to withdraw from systems that diminish you. I didn't need a house to be home, I just needed to be me. And my title was finally clear in every sense of the word. The house was gone, but I was finally home. This story is a testament to self-reclamation, reminding us that clarity often arrives because of pain, not in spite of it. The true divestment is leaving the narratives others built for you. When illusions shatter, you discover self-worth is the only solid ground. True home is an internal state defined by integrity and clear boundaries. Remember, strategic action, fueled by dignity, is the currency of freedom. You are defined not by what you lose, but by what you choose to build next. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of independence and justice. If this message of clarity and courage resonated with you, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What is the greatest lesson you've learned about defining your own worth? Follow and subscribe for more stories that challenge perceptions and celebrate the resilience of the human spirit.